Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, hope you've all been doing well. In this video, I wanted to talk about AMD's new Radeon VII graphics card and give you guys my thoughts on it. With AMD releasing their previous graphics card in the high-end segment 16 months ago, a lot of people, including myself, were getting anxious about when they would release new GPUs that would challenge Nvidia's RTX 20 series of graphics card. Back when AMD had launched Vega 64 and Vega 56, I had made a video back then where I had expressed my disappointment about the cards, and needless to say, the feedback I had received was mixed with a lot of agreeability and a lot of negativity. However, 2019 is here, and AMD is looking to capture the hearts of all enthusiasts and high-end PC gamers out there by saving us from Nvidia's overly priced and inflated GPUs by releasing the world's first 7nm gaming GPU. Or so we thought. You see, my opinion of Vega hasn't really changed as time went on. Yeah, you can probably find them on pretty good discounts nowadays, but that's not really uncommon for technology that's 16 to 17 months old at this point. Plus, with the whole crypto mining bubble bursting a while back, there's been an influx of graphics cards one can find on their local used market. Now, there had been a lot of rumors surrounding AMD's keynote before CES, such as that they were going to show off their new Navi architecture, which was apparently supposed to bring 2070 performance at the mid to high $200 range. But this didn't happen, and instead what we got was Radeon VII, also known as Vega 2. I thought the name that they chose for the card was smart, because in Roman numerals, the name signifies 7 as in 7 nanometers, but if you look at it from a alphabetical numbering perspective, it means V2 or Vega 2. So some clever marketing there, I'll give them that. But this announcement did surprise me, as I had heard that Vega on 7nm for consumers had been cancelled and that they were going to just focus on Navi instead. However, it looks like RTG has been flip-flopping on that decision and decided to uncancel Vega 7nm and instead launch that for consumers. With the way things are looking right now, it's clear that the Radeon Technologies group is kind of going through a rough time. And that's probably to be expected with so much talent leaving them and so on. But let's just talk about the card itself here for a moment. It's still based on the Vega architecture, probably with some tweaks on TSMC's 7nm process. The card has 60 compute units, 1.8 GHz effective boost clock, a whopping 16 GB of HBM2 memory, which allows this card to have a memory bandwidth of 1 TB per second, 6.9 G flops of FP64. It's also great that AMD have followed Nvidia and switched over to a triple fan open air cooler. This will allow the GPU to run much cooler as opposed to a blower styled cooler, and it will be much quieter under load. On paper, the card is a powerhouse for computing. Lisa did state in the CES keynote that this card is going to be bringing great performance in HPC applications and for content creators. If you're in the market for a card that will allow you to benefit from a GPU that offers high computing performance, then yeah, Radeon VII looks like one hell of a deal. But Lisa did introduce the Radeon VII as the world's first 7nm gaming GPU. They first compared the card against their previous flagship gaming GPU, the Vega 64. They showed the performance differences between the two cards in 3 different titles: Battlefield 5, Fortnite, and Strange Brigade. And the performance increases here look pretty decent. It's not something that's jaw-dropping, but it's noticeable nonetheless. Afterwards, they also compare it against the RTX 2080, Nvidia's second best GPU in the RTX 20 series lineup. And from the looks of things in DX11 and DX12, the card seems to be neck and neck, and in a Vulkan-based game, the Radeon VII is 19% faster than the RTX 2080, not bad. Keep in mind, the RTX 2080 is also equivalent to a 1080 Ti in terms of traditional rasterization performance. Of course, with lower level APIs like DX12 and Vulkan, Nvidia has improved in that regard by a decent margin, but overall they're fairly close with each other. Therefore, in the RTX 20 series lineup, the only real new performance bump we saw came from the 2080 Ti, but with a really hefty price tag. But speaking of price tags, Lisa announced that Radeon VII will hit store shelves on February 7th for $699. And this is where I thought things went downhill. At this price point, the Radeon VII looks pretty underwhelming, and it doesn't seem like it would be worth it, because the RTX 2080, which is what this card is directly competing with, is the same price. Yes, I know that the Founders Edition on Nvidia's website is currently $799, but on Newegg, partner models can be had for MSRP, or close to that. Another noteworthy piece of information I wanted you guys to recall on was that Nvidia had basically at this point 2 years ago launched the 1080 Ti at this same price point. So while we should be happy that AMD finally have caught up to that performance segment, they're launching it for the same price, which is what makes this so much more underwhelming considering it's on 7nm versus TSMC's 16nm FinFET. Had AMD released this card back in 2017 for around the same price, or had the Vega 64 brought performance to the table that this card is bringing, then yeah, I would have been pretty impressed. So when you think about it, saying that you can finally attain 1080 Ti performance from AMD, but you're going to have to pay the same price for it despite being 2 years later in the market, really makes this card a hard sell for gamers. I remember back when Nvidia first introduced the RTX 20 series, they showed off ray tracing and all that, then followed up with terrible pricing. A lot of people, including myself, were saying that if AMD deliver with a card that can beat or match Nvidia's high-end and raw performance, traditional rasterization performance, at a significantly lower price point, they will win the market, and it would be a good opportunity for them to claw back at the market share and mind share. I understand why this card is expensive. I don't want people to misunderstand me and think that I'm calling it unjustified, because on a new 7nm process with 16GB of HBM2 memory, which alone is like $300 to $400, Radeon 7 will be expensive to manufacture. My problem is that people were defending the card by saying, quote unquote, it's not a gaming card. But they had spent a good chunk of their time in their presentation talking about gaming performance, how it will offer you a great 4K experience and many titles. Listen, I've never really used ray tracing and DLSS as a selling point for the RTX graphics cards, because as of now, there's only like 2 games that are taking advantage of those features, and it looks like adoption from developers is going to happen very slowly, especially when the performance with these effects can be quite degrading. However, when you compare the 2080 to Radeon 7 in that regard, you at least get the option to take advantage of those features if you wish to do so. There's that potential of possibly using the features down the road at the very least. It's better to have more options like that rather than no options at all. I'll be straight up about this, but I see very few reasons why one might choose this card over an RTX 2080 when they're the same price. Even if Radeon 7 matches evenly against the RTX 2080 or 1080 Ti come review day, I feel there's very few reasons PC gamers would want to buy a Radeon 7. In this case, it's the same performance for the same money at higher power draw with less potentially gaming relevant features. And let's be real here, with Nvidia's dominance in the gaming market, more games are optimized for Nvidia GPUs than they are for Radeon GPUs. Not to mention, similar performance has been available for quite some time now with the GTX 1080 Ti if you don't want ray tracing. There are other niche use cases where someone might consider buying a Radeon 7 over an RTX 2080, but it seems at this stage, like for pure gaming, it won't be one of them. Also, with Nvidia announcing at their CES keynote that they will also start supporting FreeSync, that advantage for AMD cards is now gone. What AMD should have done is that they should have cut down on the amount of HBM memory to 12 or 8 gigabytes. This would have brought down the price of the card by a considerable amount, making it look a lot more attractive. There's not a whole lot of reasons why 16 gigabytes of HBM2 would be necessary for gamers to have. People who play at 4K are a very niche crowd right now, where like 70 to 80% of the market is still on 1080p or lower. I personally prefer to stick with 1440p 144Hz, as I think it's a good compromise between visual fidelity and fluidity. I personally wouldn't even bother making the switch until 4K 144Hz monitors are out and are cheaper, and also when you wouldn't need a graphics card which costs an arm and a leg. Plus, as of now, there really isn't even a card out right now that can meet that performance target, so we can just completely forget about that. I'll be honest with you guys, for a while now, I was even thinking of if AMD actually managed to release a card that can reliably match a 1080 Ti in performance, but at a much lower price point, I would consider making the switch, just so I could have an all AMD build. Plus, I'm not really a fan of Nvidia's drivers. Perhaps that's why I'm also a bit emotionally distraught over this whole situation. Another thing is that while we finally have competition in the CPU market, it just seems as though the GPU market has become stagnant now. We just came off this horrendous crypto mining boom, where cards like the RX 580 were selling as high as $500. Gamers everywhere were just frustrated that they couldn't find reasonably priced hardware. Also, after Nvidia released Pascal, we haven't had a new generation of products that brought down high-end performance to the mainstream and set a new bar for price to performance. The GTX 970 brought 780 Ti performance at the low $300 mark, and the GTX 1070 Ti matched the 980 Ti at a not a low $300 price point, but it was around the high 300 mark, which was a lot better than what the 980 Ti actually launched for. The RX 480 brought R9 390 performance at the $200 price point. Everyone who hates Nvidia's Turing GPUs hates them because they are expensive, and Radeon VII does nothing to change that. For those of you who have been following my channel for a while now, you'll know that I'm a fan of market competition. What we're seeing now does not facilitate that. And I'm going to repeat it again because I want to make myself clear and don't want people to get the wrong idea. There's a difference between saying something is overpriced versus it's too expensive for you. For an individual who does content creation and needs something reasonable with high computing performance, I'm sure they are jumping up and down for this card. But looking at it from a gamer's standpoint, most will just ignore it. Just saying the card is overpriced though would be wrong. It's just too expensive for the majority of gamers. So this pretty much wraps up what I had to say about AMD's new high-end GPU. It's great to see that they have at least returned to the high-end, but it's not what everyone was expecting. As someone who already has a 1080 Ti, I see no reason to switch at this price point, but as a curious tech enthusiast, I'd be lying if I said curiosity couldn't get the better of me. I hope you guys found this video to be informative and enjoyable. Leave your thoughts down below. What are your thoughts on AMD's return to the high end? Check out the video description for my other videos and ways to support the channel. And if you're interested in more content like this, then make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.